Former President Donald Trump landed in Miami earlier this afternoon. He's set to face criminal charges of unlawfully keeping U.S. national security documents, as well as lying to officials who tried to recover them. Here for more on that and also what to expect next, we want to bring in Nick Akerman, former Assistant U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York, as well as a former Watergate prosecutor. Nick, it's good to see you. Certainly, many people obviously have not been holding back. We heard from former AG Bill Barr over the weekend. He called this indictment very, very damning. I'm curious, just from your perspective, how serious this case is and how strong some of these allegations are that are outlined in this indictment.
Well, one, it's very serious. And two, the case appears to be very strong based on the evidence that's outlined in this indictment. And the indictment basically takes Donald Trump through the theft of the classified information from the White House that he kept unlawfully at Mar-a-Lago, that he used in a way that is not even permitted. They've got him on tape using one of the documents to go after General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and acknowledging on that tape that he had no ability to declassify that document, that it was still secret, and basically obliterating all the defenses that his attorneys have made over the course of the last couple of months, including defenses that he's made as well. And then you take into account the fact that he essentially hid 30 boxes of documents from his own attorney, who was charged with the duty of going through the documents to respond to a grand jury subpoena. And Trump was assisted in this whole project by his assistant, Mr. Nauta, who's also charged as a defendant here. This lays out evidence that is extremely serious and shows that Donald Trump had a total disregard for protecting classified information, keeping it in his bathroom, his shower, putting it in the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago. There's basically nothing good that comes out of all of this. And it seems like a case that's pretty straightforward. The star witness is going to be Donald Trump because they've got him on tape. They've got lots of witnesses who are going to testify as to what Trump did. This should be a pretty open and shut case.
So, Nick, Diane here. Former President Trump has maintained his innocence throughout this. And one thing that didn't show up in terms of the indictments, there wasn't any reference to kind of any business efforts to profit from this information. Does that help in his defense in any way?
Well, let me just say, what you're talking about really is the motive. Why did he take this stuff? Why did he go to the lengths that he did to keep the government from actually getting it? So that all is motive. And motive is not an element of any of the crimes here, but it does give color to what he did and to the seriousness of what he did. We do have some hints at that, where he basically was using it against General Milley to make a political point, basically Trump's idea that he's his own retribution going after General Milley. But we also know that the prosecutors were looking at other angles. They subpoenaed records from the Trump Organization on 7 foreign countries that most likely relate to some of those classified documents. And it's very possible that this kind of information and evidence is going to come out at the trial, simply because there's really not a necessity to put this into the indictment. So we don't really know exactly what this proof is going to be. And I'm sure when the trial comes along, we're going to see some surprises.
Nick, there's still a search underway for an expanded legal team. Give us a sense just of what that process is like, what the timing of that is like, and how that could potentially impact the timeline of this case, if at all.
Well, it's going to have to be pretty quick. If Trump got rid of 2 lawyers and now he's got to get other lawyers, they're going to represent him in Florida. If I were the judge, I would just make sure this is done post haste. If I were the prosecutor, I'd be trying to get this to trial in a couple of months, basically providing all the discovery as quickly as possible, trying to get the judge to set down a very short motion schedule and get this to trial. I mean, this is a simple case. Most of the evidence Trump is already aware of. And so there shouldn't be a lot of dragging the feet here. This should get to trial immediately.
So, Nick, I got to ask you, in terms of, it does seem like the evidence is pretty strong. And if this does go, not the way that President Trump would like it to go, I mean, he is still running for office again. What is the fallout from this? I mean, he can still proceed with that, correct?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's nothing in the Constitution that says you can't elect somebody who's in prison. The only qualifications are you've got to be 35 years old and born in the United States. But I find it hard to believe that he's going to last long in this race. We now have 2 indictments. We know that in late July, early August, when Fani Willis in Fulton County brings together the next grand jury that's going to indict on her case, that's going to be a blockbuster indictment that's going to charge Donald Trump and a number of other people with respect to interference in the presidential election in Georgia. And it's also likely there's going to be a 4th shoe to drop with Jack Smith with the January 6th matter that he is also investigating. At the end of the day, it's very hard to believe that the Republican Party, senators and members of the House are going to want to run for re-election in 2024 with the head of the ticket under indictment in 4 different cases. All of these cases laid out in detail in the indictments that just are not resume builders for Donald Trump. It's not going to appeal to the independents that a Republican nominee has to win over in order to take the White House.
Nick, the judge that was appointed to this case, at least for now, Eileen Cannon, appointed by Trump. There's also some attention that has been drawn to a recent ruling that she made pertaining to Trump. What kind of challenges from a former prosecutor standpoint, does this potentially pose here to the prosecution team?
I don't really think it's a big issue. Look, she made a mistake. She screwed up in terms of ordering a special master, which she shouldn't have done. She was looking at what happened in 2 other cases in New York with 2 of Trump's lawyers, Rudy Giuliani and Michael Cohen, where the judges had ordered that there be a special master. But in both of those cases, there was a good reason to do it because there was lots of potential privileged communications because both of those individuals are lawyers. Look, judges make mistakes. She was reversed by the 11th Circuit. They made it very clear to her that Donald Trump is not to be considered in any kind of special status because he's a former president, that he's to be treated just as any other criminal defendant in the federal court system is treated. And I think that she's learned her lesson. I mean, at the end of the day, and let me just say this, I mean, a lot of the judges that Donald Trump appointed, I mean, none of them have really provided him what he wanted, including the U.S. Supreme Court that didn't uphold any of his cases based on the big lie that the election was stolen and rigged. All of those cases were dismissed, a lot of them by Republican judges. And if you go back to Watergate, the same thing happened. The judge who was in charge of the Watergate case, Judge Sirica, was a Republican appointee. He's the one that essentially set up a situation that caused the Watergate burglars to come clean and cooperate against higher-ups in the White House. And the Supreme Court, many of whom were appointed by Richard Nixon, wound up deciding unanimously to order Nixon to turn over the Oval Office tapes. Bottom line, at the end of the day, I think it's better for our system, better for the judiciary, that Donald Trump be tried in front of a judge that he appointed, that he be convicted, and that people realize that this is a serious case with serious consequences, and it has no politics in it whatsoever.
Trump set to appear in federal court tomorrow, Tuesday, in Miami. Nick Akerman, great to have you. Thanks.